I never thought I'd sit at a table like this, surrounded by faces that felt more like ghosts than family. My name is Evelyn Harper, and for 28 years, my daughter, Clara, treated me like I was dead. No calls, no letters, not even a whisper of acknowledgement. I was a shadow she'd banished, a memory she'd buried under the weight of her resentment. But then the lottery ticket happened to be a fluke. A whim. A $20 scratch-off that turned into $40 million overnight. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. Suddenly, Clara's voice was on my answering machine, sweet as honey, inviting me to Thanksgiving at her pristine Connecticut estate. I should have said no. I should have burned the invitation and let the ashes scatter. But something in my hope, maybe, or vengeance made me pack a bag and drive the 6 hours to her doorstep. The house was a monument to her success. All glass and sharp angles. The kind of place that screamed money but whispered loneliness. Clara greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, her arms stiff as she hugged me. "Mom, you made it," she said, her voice polished like the marble floors. I nodded, my throat tight, and followed her inside. The dining room was already buzzing her husband, Mark, a man with a handshake too firm and eyes too calculating. Their teenage son, Ethan, slouched and sullen, and Clara's sister-in-law, Diane, who looked at me like I was a stain on her perfect world. The table was set for a feast, but I could smell the tension, sharp and acrid, like a storm brewing. I took my seat, my hands trembling under the tablecloth. Clara hadn't spoken to me since she was 17, since the night she screamed that I'd ruined her life, that I'd driven her father away with my weakness. She blamed me for his drinking, his affairs, his disappearance. I'd spent years replaying that fight, wondering if she was right. But now, here I was, a millionaire, and she was the one pouring me wine, her smile a fragile mask. I wanted to believe she'd changed, that this was her reaching out. But the way Mark kept glancing at her, the way Diane's lips curled when she mentioned my new circumstances, told me this wasn't about love. This was about money. As the meal began, the conversation danced around mess-mall talk about Ethan's college applications, Mark's latest business venture, the weather. I stayed quiet, watching Clara's every move, searching for the girl I'd raised, the one who used to draw me pictures and beg for bedtime stories. She was gone, replaced by this woman who wielded charm like a weapon. Then Ethan broke the silence, his voice cutting through the clatter of silverware. "So, Grandma, what's it like being rich?" The room froze. Clara's fork paused midair, and Mark's jaw tightened. I forced a laugh, but my chest ached. "It's different," I said, my eyes locking with Clara's. "Makes you wonder who's real and who's not." Her smile faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. I saw it: guilt, the calculation, the flicker of something darker. I'd come here hoping for reconciliation, but now I wasn't so sure. Maybe I was here for something else. Maybe I was here to make her pay for those 28 years of silence. The thought sent a shiver through me, not of fear, but of power. I'd been weak once, just like she'd said. Not anymore. Dinner dragged on, each course heavier than the last. Diane kept needling me with questions about my plans for the money, her voice dripping with condescension. "You must be overwhelmed, Evelyn. All that wealth, no experience managing it." I smiled tightly, letting her words slide off me. Mark chimed in. offering to help with investments, his eyes gleaming like a predator's. Clara stayed silent, her gaze darting between us, and I could feel her unease growing. Good. Let her squirm. Let her wonder what I knew. What I'd do. By the time dessert arrived, pumpkin pie with a perfect, flaky crust, I was done playing the grateful mother. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers brushing the edge of my wine glass, and asked the question that had been burning in me since I'd arrived. Clara, I said, my voice steady. Why now? Why invite me after all this time? The room went still again, the air thick with anticipation. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Mark tried to jump in, something about family and healing, but I cut him off. No, Mark. I want to hear it from her. Clara's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her facade. Fear. Maybe. Or shame. I missed you, she said, but the words sounded hollow, rehearsed. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. You missed me. Or you missed a chance at my money. The question hung there, sharp and unforgiving, and I saw Ethan's eyes widen, Diane's mouth twist into a smirk. Clara's face flushed, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But then she laughed, a brittle, forced sound, and said, Mom, don't be ridiculous. Ridiculous. The word stung, but it also lit a fire in me. I wasn't here to be dismissed. Not again. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor, and looked at each of them. Clara, Mark, Diane, Ethan. I came here thinking we could fix things, I said, my voice low but steady. But I see it now. You don't want me. You want what I have. I paused, letting the words sink in. And I'm going to make sure none of you get a dime. The room erupted, Mark shouting about respect, Diane gasping in mock horror, Clara pleading for me to sit down. But I was already moving, my heart racing with a strange, wild freedom. I'd spent decades carrying their judgment, their silence, their blame. No more. This Thanksgiving wasn't about gratitude. It was about reckoning. And I was just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. Clara's guest room was pristine, with crisp white linens and a view of her manicured lawn. But it felt like a cage. The silence of the house pressed against me, broken only by the occasional creak of floorboards or the distant hum of a car. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the dinner in my head. Clara's forced smile, Mark's oily charm, Diane's barbed comments, they all swirled together, feeding the anger that had been simmering in me for years. I'd come here hoping for a bridge, a way back to my daughter. But instead I'd found a battlefield. And I wasn't about to lose. Morning came too soon, the sunlight slicing through the curtains like a warning. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple sweater and slacks. Nothing flashy. I didn't need to flaunt my wealth. The weight of it was already shifting the air around me. Downstairs, the kitchen was alive with the clatter of breakfast preparations. Clara was at the counter, pouring coffee, her movements jerky, like she hadn't slept either. Ethan slouched at the table, scrolling on his phone, while Mark read a newspaper with exaggerated calm. Diane was nowhere to be seen, probably nursing her wounded pride from last night. Morning, Mom, Clara said, her voice too bright, like she was trying to erase the tension from dinner. I nodded, taking a seat across from Ethan. He barely glanced up, but I caught the flicker of curiosity in his eyes. He was young, maybe 16, with Clara's sharp cheekbones and a restlessness that reminded me of her at that age. I wondered what she'd told him about me, if she'd painted me as the villain in her story. "Sleep well?" Mark asked, folding his newspaper with a crisp snap. His tone was polite, but his eyes were cold, assessing. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch. "Well enough," I said finally, though I kept thinking about last night. Hard to rest when there's so much unsaid. Clara's hand froze on the coffee pot, and Mark's smile tightened. Ethan looked up, his phone forgotten. "Mom, can we not do this now?" Clara said, her voice low, pleading. But I wasn't here to make her comfortable. "Do what?" "Clara. Talk. Isn't that why you invited me?" "To talk." My words were sharp, but I kept my tone even, almost gentle. I wanted her to feel the weight of them, to know I wasn't backing down. Mark cleared his throat, stepping in like a referee. "Evelyn, we're all just glad you're here. Let's focus on that." "Huh. Family time." He flashed a grin, the kind that probably closed deals and charmed investors. But it did nothing for me. I leaned forward, my eyes on Clara. "Family time," I repeated. Funny how that only matters now, after 28 years. After the money. Ethan snorted, a small, involuntary sound, and Clara shot him a look. "What's so funny?" I asked, turning to him. He shrugged, his face half hidden by his hair. You're not wrong," he muttered. Clara's cheeks reddened, and Mark's jaw clenched. But I felt a spark of something connection. Maybe with this boy who didn't seem to buy his parents' polished act. "Ethan, go to your room," Clara snapped, her voice sharper than I'd heard it. He rolled his eyes but stood, grabbing his phone and slouching out of the kitchen. I watched him go, wondering what he saw in this house, what truths he carried that Clara didn't want me to know. With Ethan gone, the room felt smaller, the air thicker. Clara busied herself with the dishes, her back to me, while Mark tried to steer the conversation to safer ground, something about a local charity gala. I let him talk, my mind racing. I'd spent years imagining this moment, confronting Clara, demanding answers. But now that I was here, it wasn't enough to just speak. I needed her to feel what I'd felt, the abandonment, the ache of being erased. "I want to know something," I said, cutting through Mark's monologue. He stopped, his mouth half open, and Clara turned, her hands dripping with soapy water. "Why did you cut me out?" "Clara. Really? Not the excuses. Not the blame about your father. The truth." My voice was steady, but inside, I was trembling. This was a question that had haunted me for nearly 3 decades. Clara's lips parted, but no sound came. She looked at Mark, then back at me, her eyes wide with something like panic. I was angry," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "You let him destroy us. You didn't fight for me." The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. "I fought every day," I said, my voice low, fierce. "I fought to keep a roof over your head, to put food on the table after he left us with nothing. You think I didn't want to save you from him? I did. But you were the one who walked away. Clara, you chose to hate me. Her face crumpled. And for a moment, I saw the girl she'd been scared, hurt, lashing out. But then her expression hardened, and she turned back to the sink. "You don't understand," she said, her voice cold. "You never did." I wanted to scream, to shake her until she saw me, really saw me. But I didn't. Instead, I stood, my chair scraping softly against the floor. "Maybe I didn't," I said. "But I'm here now. And I'm not leaving until I get answers." I walked out of the kitchen, my heart pounding, my mind already turning over the next move. Clara thought she could play me, use my money to fix whatever mess she was in. She was wrong. I'd come for reconciliation, but I was staying for justice. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of polite avoidance. Clara kept busy with errands. Mark disappeared to his study, and I was left to wander the house, a stranger in my daughter's world. Every room was a testament to her success artwork on the walls. Furniture that cost more than my old apartment, but it felt hollow, like a stage set for someone else's life. I found myself in the living room, staring at a framed photo of Clara and Ethan, their smiles bright but distant. I wondered when she'd last been happy, really happy, or if she even knew what that meant anymore. Ethan appeared around noon, his hoodie pulled up, earbuds dangling from his neck. He didn't seem surprised to see me, just nodded and flopped onto the couch. "You're still here," he said. Not a question, but a statement. Like he'd expected me to bolt. I sat across from him, my hands folded in my lap. "I am," I said. "Got nowhere else to be." He smirked, a quick flash of teeth, and I saw a chance to dig deeper. "You don't seem thrilled about this family reunion either," I added, keeping my tone light. He shrugged, picking at a thread on his sleeve. "It's whatever. Mom's just, Mom. Always got a plan." His words were casual, but there was an edge to them, a hint of resentment that mirrored my own. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "What kind of plan?" He glanced at the doorway, like he was checking for eavesdroppers, then met my eyes. "Dunno. But she's been freaking out since she heard about your money. Keeps talking about securing our future." My stomach twisted. Securing our future. It sounded so noble, so maternal. But I knew better. Clara wasn't thinking about Ethan or even herself. She was thinking about power, about control. I'd seen it in her eyes last night, the way they darted to Mark when I mentioned the money. They were in this together, whatever this was. "And your dad?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "He part of this plan?" Ethan's smirk faded, and he looked away. "Dad's always got a plan. Usually involves him getting richer." Before I could press further, Clara swept into the room, her purse slung over her shoulder. "Ethan, go help your father with the garage," she said, her tone clipped. He rolled his eyes but obeyed, leaving me alone with her. She hesitated, then forced a smile. "I thought we could go for a walk, Mom. Just us." I nodded, sensing a shift. This was her move, her attempt to regain control. I'd play along for now. We walked through her neighborhood, a maze of manicured lawns and identical mansions. The air was crisp, the kind of autumn chill that made your breath catch. Clara talked about trivial things: her garden, the weather, a new restaurant in town, but I could feel her building up to something. Finally, she stopped at a small park, her hands stuffed in her coat pockets. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice soft but deliberate. I shouldn't have cut you out. I was young, angry. I didn't understand what you went through. Her words should have warmed me, but they didn't. They felt rehearsed, like lines from a script. I studied her face, searching for sincerity, but all I saw was calculation. Why now, Clara? I asked again, my voice quieter this time. Why reach out after all these years? She looked away, her jaw tight. I told you. I missed you. Bullshit, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop it. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, we were back in that old apartment. Her screaming, me pleading. You didn't miss me. I went on, my voice steady now. You heard about the money, and suddenly I'm worth your time. What do you need, Clara? A loan. A payout. What's the game? Her face flushed, and she took a step back, like I'd slapped her. That's not fair, she said, but her voice shook. You think I'm some gold digger. I'm your daughter. Then act like it. I snapped. Tell me the truth. What do you want? The question hung between us, heavy and raw. For a moment, I thought she might break, might let the mask slip. But then her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, her expression shifting to something guarded. We should head back, she said, turning away. Mark's expecting us. The walk back was silent, the distance between us wider than ever. I knew I'd pushed too hard, but I didn't care. I wasn't here to play nice. I was here to uncover whatever scheme Clara and Mark were cooking up. By the time we reached the house, my mind was racing with possibilities: debts, investments gone wrong, maybe even something darker. I didn't trust them, not an inch, but I trusted Ethan's slip about securing our future. That was my way in. Back at the house, Mark was waiting in the foyer, his smile too wide, too perfect. Good walk? He asked, his eyes flicking between us. Clara nodded, brushing past him to the kitchen. I met his gaze, letting him see the steel in mine. Lovely, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Really cleared the air. He chuckled, but it was forced, and I knew he felt it too, the storm coming, the reckoning I was building. I wasn't just Evelyn Harper anymore, the broken mother Clara had left behind. I was someone with power, someone who could make them pay. And I would. The afternoon was a blur of forced pleasantries. Clara insisted on a family activity, dragging us all to a local farmer's market, as if pumpkins and homemade jam could stitch us back together. Mark played the doting husband, holding her hand, while Ethan trailed behind, his earbuds firmly in place. Diane joined us, her designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, but not her smirk. I kept my distance, observing, cataloging every glance, every whispered exchange between Clara and Mark. They were nervous. I could tell Clara's laugh too loud, Mark's grip on her hand too tight. They were hiding something, and I was determined to find out what. At the market, I lingered near a stall selling honey, pretending to study the jars while listening to Clara and Diane's hushed conversation a few feet away. You need to talk to her, Diane was saying, her voice low but sharp. This isn't working. She's not buying it. Clara's response was too quiet to hear, but her posture, shoulders hunched, hands twisting her scarf, screamed desperation. I felt a pang of something pity. Maybe, but it was quickly drowned by anger. Whatever they were planning, I wasn't going to make it easy. Back at the house, Clara suggested a board game, her voice brittle with forced cheer. I declined, claiming a headache, and retreated to the guest room. I needed space to think, to plan. My phone buzzed as I closed the door, a text from my lawyer, confirming the trust I'd set up for my fortune. No one could touch it, not without my consent. It was my shield, my weapon, and I wasn't about to let Clara or Mark manipulate their way into it. I spent the next hour searching the guest room, looking for anything that might give me a clue. I didn't expect to find much, but desperation makes you thorough. Under the bed, tucked in a corner, I found a small notebook, its pages filled with Ethan's messy handwriting song lyrics. Mostly angry and raw, but one page caught my eye. It was a list. Mom's plan: talk to Grandma, get her to invest, save the house. My heart sank, then hardened. The house. Of course. They were in financial trouble, probably underwater on this ostentatious mansion. Clara's invitation wasn't about family, it was about survival. I slipped the notebook back where I'd found it, my mind racing. I could confront her now, wave the evidence in her face. But that would be too easy. I wanted her to admit it, to beg, to show me who she really was. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, just as I'd felt the weight of her silence for 28 years. Dinner that night was quieter, the tension thicker. Clara barely looked at me, her eyes fixed on her plate, while Mark kept up a stream of meaningless chatter. Ethan was silent, his gaze flickering between his parents and me, like he was waiting for something to break. Diane, predictably, was the one to stir the pot. So, Evelyn, she said, swirling her wine, have you thought about what you'll do with all that money? Must be hard, deciding who's worthy of it. The jab was obvious, but I didn't take the bait. Instead, I smiled, slow and deliberate. Oh, I've got plans, I said. Big ones. But I'm careful about who I trust. Learned that the hard way. My eyes flicked to Clara, and she flinched. Just barely. Mark jumped in, his voice smooth as ever. Wise move. Plenty of vultures out there. He laughed, but it was hollow, and I could see the sweat beading at his temples. After dinner, I cornered Ethan in the hallway, away from his parents' watchful eyes. I found your notebook, I said quietly, watching his face. His eyes widened, but he didn't deny it. You know what they're planning, don't you? He nodded, his jaw tight. They're broke, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Dad's company tanked. They think you're their way out. I felt a strange mix of triumph and sorrow. Triumph, because I'd been right. Sorrow, because my daughter had sunk so low. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. He shrugged, looking younger than his years. Didn't think you'd care. Mom said you never did. The words cut deep, but I pushed past the pain. She's wrong, I said, and I'm going to prove it. I let him go, my mind already spinning. Clara and Mark thought they could use me, manipulate me into bailing them out. They didn't know who they were dealing with. I wasn't the broken woman Clara had left behind. I was Evelyn Harper, and I had 40 million reasons to make them regret underestimating me. The next morning, I woke with a plan. Clara and Mark were playing a game, but I could play one too. I'd let them think they were winning. Let them dig their own graves. Over breakfast, I was all smiles, complimenting Clara's cooking, asking Mark about his business with feigned interest. They relaxed, just a little, their guards slipping as they sensed an opening. I could almost see the calculations in their eyes, how much to ask for, how to phrase it, how to make me feel like it was my idea. After breakfast, Clara suggested we spend the day together, just the two of us. Like old times, she said, her voice wistful. I nodded, swallowing the bitterness that rose in my throat. Old times. She meant the days before she'd turned her back on me, before she'd decided I was the enemy. I agreed, curious to see how far she'd take this charade. We drove to a nearby lake, its surface glassy under the gray November sky. Clara parked the car, and we walked along the shore, the crunch of gravel under our boots the only sound for a while. She was nervous, her hands fidgeting with her scarf, her eyes darting to me and away. Finally, she spoke. I've been thinking a lot about us, she said. About what happened. I was wrong, Mom. I shouldn't have blamed you for Dad. Her words were soft, almost convincing, but I knew better. I'd seen Ethan's notebook, heard his confession. This was part of the script, the setup for whatever pitch was coming. It's in the past, I said, my voice neutral. We can't change it. She nodded, her eyes glistening with what might have been tears are a damn good act. I just want us to be a family again, she said. For Ethan's sake. There it was, the hook. Ethan. She knew I'd seen something in him, a spark of honesty she lacked. She was using him to get to me. I stopped walking, turning to face her. What do you need, Clara? I asked, my voice low, direct. Really? No games. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she might crack. But then she smiled, that polished, perfect smile, and said, just you, Mom. That's all. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But the lie was there, in the tightness of her jaw, the way her hands twisted together. I nodded, letting her think I was softening. Let's head back, I said. I could use some coffee. She agreed, relieved, and we drove home in silence, the weight of her deception heavy between us. Back at the house, Mark was waiting, his laptop open on the kitchen table. Evelyn, I was just going over some investment opportunities, he said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. Thought you might be interested. There it was, the pitch. I sat down, folding my hands in my lap. Tell me more, I said, keeping my voice curious, encouraging. He launched into a spiel about a startup, some tech nonsense about AI and blockchain, throwing around buzzwords like confetti. I nodded along, pretending to be impressed, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about Ethan, about the notebook, about the house they were so desperate to save. I was thinking about the girl Clara used to be, the one who trusted me, loved me, before the world broke us apart. And I was thinking about justice, not the loud, vengeful kind, but the quiet, deliberate kind that left no room for doubt. That night, I called my lawyer again, this time with a new request. I wanted information in Mark's company, on their finances, on anything that could confirm what Ethan had told me. By morning, I had an email waiting. Mark's startup had collapsed 6 months ago, bleeding money faster than it could make it. The house was mortgaged to the hilt, with payments overdue. Clara and Mark were drowning, and I was their lifeline. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, staring at the email, my heart a tangle of anger and grief. Clara hadn't invited me here to reconnect. She'd invited me to save her from the mess she'd made. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave them to their ruin. But another part, the part that still remembered her as my little girl, wanted to save her. Not for her sake, but for mine. I wasn't ready to choose yet, but I was ready to make them sweat. The days blurred together, each one a careful dance of pretense and suspicion. Clara and Mark were relentless, dropping hints about their struggles, their voices heavy with practiced vulnerability. Clara would mention Ethan's college fund, her eyes downcast, while Mark talked about temporary setbacks in his business, his smile tight. I played along, nodding sympathetically, asking questions that made them think I was considering their pleas. But every word they spoke only deepened my resolve. They weren't getting a scent nod until I had the truth. Ethan was my unexpected ally. He didn't say much, but he watched everything, his sharp eyes catching the cracks in his parents' facade. One afternoon, while Clara and Mark were out running errands, I found him in the garage, tinkering with an old skateboard. "You're not like them," I said, leaning against the workbench. He glanced up, surprised, then shrugged. "Dunno. Guess not." I took a chance, lowering my voice. "You know they're using me, right? For the money." He nodded, his hands stilling on the board. "Yeah. It's messed up." I studied him. This boy caught in the middle of his parents' schemes. "Why haven't you called them out?" I asked. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. "Tried once. Mom cried. Dad yelled. Said it's for me. For my future. But I don't buy it." His honesty hit me hard. A reminder of the Clara I'd lost, the one who'd been open, unguarded, before resentment hardened her. "You're a good kid, Ethan," I said. "Don't let them drag you down with them." He looked at me, his eyes searching, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in this house. That night, Clara pushed harder. Over dinner, she brought up a family trust, her voice casual but her eyes locked on mine. "It could be a way to keep us all secure," she said. "You, me, Ethan, even future generations." Mark nodded, chiming in with details about tax benefits and legacy planning. I listened, my face a mask of interest. But inside, I was seething. They thought I was a fool, a lonely old woman they could charm into signing over her fortune. "I'll think about it," I said, my tone light. "But I need to know exactly what I'm getting into." Full transparency. Clara's smile faltered, and Mark's eyes narrowed. Just for a second. They didn't like that word transparency. It was a crack in their plan, a challenge they hadn't expected. Diane, who'd been quiet most of the meal, snorted softly. "Transparency's overrated," she said, sipping her wine. "Sometimes it's better to just trust family." I met her gaze, my smile sharp. "Trust is earned, Diane. And I'm still waiting." The table went quiet, the air thick with tension. Ethan pushed his plate away, muttering something about homework, and slipped out. Clara's hands trembled as she cleared the dishes. and Mark's jaw was so tight I thought it might snap. I'd rattled them, and it felt good. Later, in the guest room, I found a note slipped under my door. Ethan's handwriting. Messy but clear. Check Dad's office. Bottom drawer. Left side. My heart raced as I read it. A mix of gratitude and dread. Ethan was taking a risk, and I wasn't about to waste it. I waited until the house was quiet, then crept downstairs to Mark's study. The door was unlocked. The room dark except for the glow of a computer screen. I moved quickly, finding the bottom drawer on the left side of his desk. Inside was a folder, thick with papers, bank statements, loan agreements, foreclosure notices. I skimmed them, my pulse pounding. The house was weeks away from being seized. Mark's company was a black hole of debt, and Clara's name was on every loan, every defaulted payment. They were desperate, and I was their last hope. I tucked the folder back, my mind racing. This was the proof I needed. But it wasn't enough to just know. I had to use it, to make them face what they'd done. I went back to my room. The folder's contents burned into my mind. Clara had invited me here under false pretenses. But I wasn't the only one being played. Ethan was caught in their web, a pawn in their scheme. I couldn't save Clara from herself, not yet, but I could save him. And I would. The next day, I played my part perfectly. I joined Clara in the kitchen, helped her chop vegetables for lunch, laughed at her small talk. She seemed relieved, her shoulders loosening as she thought I was coming around. Mark was bolder, dropping hints about a partnership that could benefit us all. I nodded, asked questions, let them think they were reeling me in. But every word they spoke only sharpened my resolve. They weren't just after my money, they were willing to sacrifice everything, even Ethan, to get it. I found Ethan in the backyard, kicking a soccer ball against the fence. Thanks for the tip, I said quietly, sitting on the porch steps. He glanced over, his expression guarded. Find anything? I nodded. Enough to know they're in deep. Why'd you help me? He kicked the ball harder, the thud echoing in the quiet yard. I'm tired of their lies, he said. They act like I don't see it. But I do. I'm not a kid anymore. I studied him. This boy who carried so much of Clara's fire, but none of her deceit. You don't have to stay in this, Ethan, I said. You've got choices. He stopped, the ball rolling to a halt. Like what? Run away. Live with you. His tone was half joking, but his eyes were serious. I smiled. A real one this time. Maybe. Or maybe just be yourself. Not their pawn. He didn't answer, but I saw something shift in him. A spark of hope. That evening, I set the trap. Over dinner, I mentioned I'd been talking to my lawyer about estate planning. Clara's eyes lit up, and Mark leaned forward, his fork forgotten. That's smart, he said. Securing your legacy. I nodded, taking a slow sip of wine. Exactly. I'm thinking of setting up a trust for Ethan. The room went still. Clara's smile froze, and Mark's eyes narrowed. Ethan, he repeated, his voice tight. Why just him? I shrugged, keeping my tone casual. He's the future, isn't he? I want to make sure he's taken care of, no matter what happens to this house or your business. The jab landed hard. Clara's face paled, and Mark's hand clenched around his glass. Diane, who'd been silent, laughed a sharp, bitter sound. "Well, that's generous," she said. "But family's more than one person, Evelyn. Family's about trust." I shot back. "And I trust Ethan." The words hung there, heavy with implication. Clara pushed her chair back, muttering something about needing air, and fled to the kitchen. Mark followed, his face a mask of barely controlled anger. Diane stayed, her eyes gleaming with amusement. "You're stirring up trouble," she said, almost admiringly. "Careful, Evelyn. You might get what you're asking for." I met her gaze, unflinching. "I'm counting on it." After dinner, I heard Clara and Mark arguing in their bedroom, their voices muffled but heated. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear panic, desperation, blame. I smiled to myself, a cold, quiet satisfaction settling in my chest. They were unraveling, just as I'd planned. Later, I found Ethan in his room, his guitar across his lap. "They're freaking out," he said, not looking up. "Good," I replied, sitting on the edge of his bed. "They should be. But this isn't about them anymore. It's about you." He strummed a chord, the sound sharp and mournful. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward, my voice low. "I'm setting up a trust for you, Ethan. Not a dime for them unless they come clean. You're my family now." His fingers stilled, and he looked at me, his eyes wide with something like awe. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you're honest," I said. "And because I see me and you the part that kept fighting, even when it hurt." He nodded, his throat working, and I knew I'd reached him. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just fighting for revenge. I was fighting for something real, something worth saving. The house felt like a pressure cooker, every conversation laced with unspoken accusations. Clara avoided me, her eyes red-rimmed, her smiles forced. Mark was all charm, doubling down on his investment pitches. But I could see the strain in his jaw, the way his hands shook when he thought no one was watching. Diane watched it all with a vulture's patience, her barbed comments stoking the tension. Ethan stayed close to me, his quiet presence a lifeline in the chaos. I was winning, but it didn't feel like victory, not yet. I spent the morning digging deeper, using my phone to search for more on Mark's company. The internet was a treasure trove of bad news articles about failed ventures, lawsuits, disgruntled investors. Mark wasn't just broke. He was toxic, a man who'd built his empire on promises he couldn't keep. Clara's name was tied to it all, her signature on loans. Her reputation dragged through the mud alongside his. I felt a flicker of pity, but it was fleeting. She'd chosen this life, chosen him over me. Now she'd face the consequences. At lunch, I dropped another bomb. "I'm meeting with my lawyer tomorrow," I said, slicing into my sandwich with deliberate calm. "Finalizing the trust for Ethan." Clara's fork clattered to her plate, and Mark's face went red. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice too loud. "That's sudden." I shrugged, meeting his eyes. "No point waiting. I know what I want." Clara stood abruptly, muttering about dishes, and fled. Mark followed, leaving me with Diane, who raised an eyebrow. "You're ruthless," she said, almost impressed. "Didn't think you had it in you." I smiled. Cold and steady. You have no idea. After lunch, I found Clara in the garden, her hands buried in the soil, her face streaked with tears. For a moment, I saw the girl she'd been, the one who'd loved planting flowers with me, who'd laughed as dirt smudged her cheeks. But that girl was gone, buried under years of resentment and greed. Clara, I said, my voice softer than I meant it to be. She looked up, her eyes raw. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why are you making this so hard? The question hit me like a punch. Because you made it hard, I said, my voice trembling now. 28 years. Clara, you left me. You erased me. And now you want my money to fix your mistakes. She flinched, her hands clenching the dirt. It's not about the money, she said, but the lie was weak, crumbling under my gaze. Then what is it? I demanded. Tell me. Now. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, she whispered, and for the first time, it sounded real. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I turned and walked away, leaving her in the dirt, my heart a storm of anger and grief. I wanted to forgive her, to pull her into my arms and make it right. But I couldn't not until she faced the truth. That night, Ethan came to my room, his face pale. They're planning something, he said. I heard them talking. They're going to ask you to sign something tomorrow. My blood ran cold, but I nodded, keeping my voice calm. What kind of something? He shrugged, his eyes dark with worry. Dunno. Papers. Dad said it's a sure thing. I thanked him, my mind racing. Papers. A contract. Probably. Or a loan disguised as an investment. They were desperate, and desperation made them sloppy. I stayed up late, drafting my own plan. I'd meet their move with one of my own. Let them think they'd won, then pull the rug out. I wasn't just fighting for justice anymore, I was fighting for redemption. For the family I'd lost. For the woman I'd become. Clara and Mark thought they could outsmart me. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The morning of the showdown dawned cold and gray, the sky heavy with the promise of rain. I dressed carefully, choosing a navy blazer that made me feel sharp, in control. Clara was already in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug, her eyes hollow. Mark was there too, his laptop open, papers spread across the table. Morning, Evelyn, he said, his voice smooth but strained. Got something for you to look at? I nodded, taking a seat, my heart steady despite the adrenaline pumping through me. He slid a folder across the table, his smile too wide. Just a proposal, he said. A way to secure everyone's future. I opened it, scanning the page's legal jargon. Numbers. A contract that would tie my money to their sinking ship. It was clever, dressed up as a partnership. But I saw it for what it was, a trap. I looked up, meeting Clara's eyes. She was watching me, her face pale, her hands trembling. What do you think? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I closed the folder, pushing it back toward Mark. I think you're desperate, I said, my voice calm but cutting. I think you're drowning, and you thought I'd be your lifeboat. Mark's smile vanished, and Clara's breath hitched. Evelyn. That's not, he started. But I cut him off. I found the foreclosure notices. Mark. The lawsuits. The debt. You're not hiding it as well as you think. The room went silent, the air thick with shock. Clara's eyes filled with tears, and Mark's face twisted with anger. You had no right, he began. But I stood, my voice rising. I had every right. You invited me here, thinking you could play me. You thought I'd hand over my money to save your house, your reputation. But I'm not that woman anymore. Clara stood too, her hands clenched. Mom, please, she said, her voice breaking. We're losing everything. I didn't know what else to do. For a moment, I wavered, the pain in her voice cutting through my armor. But then I remembered Ethan's notebook, the years of silence, the lies. You could have told me the truth, I said. You could have trusted me. But you didn't. You chose this. Mark slammed his hand on the table, the papers scattering. You think you're better than us, he shouted. You're just a bitter old woman with too much money and no one to share it with. His words stung, but I didn't flinch. Maybe, I said. But I'm not the one begging. I turned to Clara, my voice softer but no less firm. I came here hoping for a daughter. Instead, I found a stranger. She sobbed, her hands covering her face. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I'm leaving tomorrow, I said. And I'm taking Ethan with me if he wants to come. The trust is for him, not you. You'll get nothing until you prove you're worth it. I walked out, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I'd done it. I'd laid it all bare, exposed their lies, their greed. But it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like loss. Ethan was waiting in the hallway, his eyes wide. You meant it? He asked. About the trust. I nodded. And about you coming with me, if you want. He swallowed, his face a mix of fear and hope. I'll think about it, he said. I nodded, knowing I couldn't push him. This was his choice, his chance to break free. That night, Clara came to my room, her face streaked with tears. I'm sorry, she said, her voice raw. I was wrong. About everything. I looked at her, searching for the truth. But all I saw was desperation. Prove it, I said. Not with words. With actions. She nodded, her shoulders shaking, and left. I didn't know if she could do it, if she could change. But for the first time, I wanted her to try. The final morning was quiet, the house heavy with the aftermath of yesterday's confrontation. I packed my bag slowly, each item a reminder of the choice I'd made to walk away, to protect what was mine, to give Ethan a chance at something better. Clara and Mark were nowhere to be seen, but Ethan was waiting in the kitchen, his backpack slung over one shoulder. I'm coming with you, he said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his eyes. I nodded, a weight lifting off my chest. Good, I said. Let's go. We drove away from Clara's house, the mansion shrinking in the rearview mirror, a monument to her mistakes. Ethan was quiet, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. But I could feel his relief, his hope. I didn't know what came next for us, but I knew it was a start, a chance to build something real, something honest. Clara called that night, her voice trembling through the phone. "I'm going to change," she said. "I'll prove it. Mom. I'll make this right." I listened, my heart torn between doubt and hope. "I'll be watching," I said. "For Ethan's sake. I hope you mean it." I hung up, the weight of 28 years still heavy but lighter than before. I wasn't the woman Clara had abandoned, the one who'd begged for her love. I was Evelyn Harper, a woman who'd found her strength, her purpose. I'd come for revenge, but I was leaving with something better: redemption. Not just for me, but for the family we might still become. The road ahead was long, but for the first time in years, I wasn't walking it alone.